Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was actually like, wait, is his name really Adam the other day? Because I was like, I looked up and I'm like, that, how do you guys look so alike and you're both named Adams?
You see it too?
I do. Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I get the two people. People call me Adam Driver, or I'll get Adam Levine sometimes, especially when I get my haircut like really fresh and have the beard shorter lined up. I get Adam Levine all the time, and I've had guests at the
No,
bar.
no, I
You don't
don't
see
see
that one?
that. No, it's easy, bro.
I'm like, I
Relax.
just I just look like a typical Adam.
I'm just white. That's
Yeah,
funny.
I just look like an Adam. But I've had guests at the bar like call me Adam, and I just thought somebody told them that my name, or like they knew my name, and they've been like so like what's your actual name? And I'm like it's Adam. They're like no shit. They're like I was just saying that because you look like Adam Driver.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
So, how,
it's the nose.
so you're still working at Chica? How's that over there?
Chica's good. It's a fun bar to work behind. It's fast paced, like high volume bar. It's in the Venetian, so it's just a great location. I love working in the Venetian because it's always busy. Um, you got the Sands Expo there, all the conventions and conferences that are in town all the time. You have the Sphere that opened up, has a lot of concerts and events going on over there. So Venetian's definitely a great spot to be at, and Chica itself is a cool restaurant, great company to work for. You worked there with me for a little bit. How'd you like it?
I actually enjoyed it a lot. It was, it was the perfect answer for me at that time in my career where I uh, I didn't want to focus on a beverage program anymore. I wanted to just be a little more free to uh, free to be myself and just kind of have fun with guests and not actually do when you dedicate yourself to a bar program and you were doing it, god, back when I first really got to know you at Nora's. But it's like it becomes your life. You're on your days off, you're still getting calls about it or questions, and you know and then you're like, at the end of the day, it's not my name on the building, so it's like really you're just doing it, which is nothing wrong with it. It's part of like the rite of passage you learn.
Yeah.
But I just realized, I'm like, man, I want to start either like working like bartending just for fun, because you start to lose a little bit of the love for it when it's like a job every day.
Yeah, when it becomes just all about labor and
Yeah.
pressure and responsibility and everything like
And then
that.
working with brands, and sometimes you want to work with certain brands but you can't, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
you're always got to think of the budget,
It
so it's
becomes,
like,
it becomes political and everything, definitely. But that's why when I was bar managing, I also was behind the bar a couple days a week and everything. I had my shifts behind the bar, and like that was what I loved about it, is like I still had my playground, and I was still able to, have those shifts back there behind the bar instead of it just being all managerial duties. That definitely helped, and I did that for a while up until like COVID happened and the bar shut down. So there was like really like no one behind the bar for a little while, or just like one person behind the bar with no bar guests, just making drinks for the the tables that were like separated 6 feet apart. That's when I stopped bartending over there, and I definitely like noticed the difference in my happiness when I was bartending still, and to when I was just doing the manager stuff.
well, I remember when you were like done with Vetri, because we worked at Vetri. Me and him have worked together. Nora's, Vetri, Chica. We've done events together.
Yeah.
Am I forgetting anything? And we worked at different places. Like he worked at Cut
Oh
more
yeah.
recently.
Not together, but yeah, we both have worked there. Wish we worked there together.
I know that would have been
That would
fun.
have been cool.
I mean, and that was kind of the coolest well that I've ever been a part of. The well there is cool because, cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
The well there was awesome because even though you have to do cobbler shakers, I mean, at the time when I was there,
Yeah. Oh, still.
because it's Japanese style, right? So
Yeah.
with the cobbler shakers, you can't really double shake and all that. So you're building your whole cocktails, and you might have like 12 drinks that you're making.
Yeah.
And we're setting up, right? And I know, but you came with the remodel. I was with the old bar.
It's true. Our experiences at Cut were very different because we worked there at two different times. However, the standards were there
Always.
for both of us, and that's what I loved. And I remember before I started working there, I asked your opinion about it. I'm like, because I knew that you had worked there in the past. I'm like, hey, like I've got an opportunity to work at Cut. What do you think? And that's one of the things that you told me is like it's a great place to work because you're gonna learn to become a better bartender because of their bartending practices are very high end with good standards and everything. So
My favorite was the chef made juices, like that ginger juice. Oh,
yeah,
I was obsessed with that stuff.
they
I
did
could
ginger juice. They did like a chili syrup, like a spicy chili syrup. They did lemongrass syrup.
And when I was there,
They did some really, really cool things. And it was nice because, yeah, the chefs did it for you. The kitchen did all the prep. So as a bartender, you didn't have that responsibility,
absolutely.
which was definitely a weight off your shoulders. As a bartender, if you work at Cut, you are spoiled.
Well, for sure, when I was there, we had to chip ice, so we'd
Yeah.
get the 100-pound block of
You
ice.
did have to do
And I'm
that.
like, and you're like,
I heard,
actually, they're like,
I heard stories, and like we didn't have to do that. We had our ice. We would buy it, already like chipped, and that I'll tell you in a minute, like had some issues of its own, but we didn't have that big block of ice on the back bar that we'd have to chip away and carve it into a
well,
smaller
you have to come.
piece.
It was 3 hours before your shift started. Like, was
Yeah.
the first person that bartended,
Yeah,
and then you leave and let someone else close. But
yeah.
to me, that was just
Yeah, when I was there,
wild.
it was a 2 hour opening, and even though like you have the chefs do that stuff for you, there's a lot less work they have to do there, but there is still a lot of work they have to do because it's their bar program's pretty big. There's a lot of ingredients, and you're using fresh ingredients every day. So every day you're cutting fresh fruit, cutting fresh pills, doing fresh juices. Like you're completely setting up that bar from nothing. You're not pulling out the lime juice and lemon juice that you already had bottled from yesterday. You're doing it all fresh. So it was a big opening.
And you had to drop off to the chef.
You had to just
Well, it's still Matt Hurley when you were there, right? He's still running that place.
Matt Hurley.
You'd have to drop off every day little sips for him to try.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like what's really nice is most restaurants don't adjust like the sugar in their like juices. They just juice the lemons, and there's our lemon juice. Like they would acid correct, and it would be like the same amount of bricks.
Exactly.
So it's like as far as like having a consistent and high quality product, I mean, man, it spoiled me for that. And at the time, like I said, it was a different level of work. Plus, we had like that old school, like really high tiered, multiple tiers of like the whiskey shelf. And you had to get like the ladder, and it was like super high up, and you're just like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." Like you had to be on the top if someone wanted like the Irish whiskeys.
Yeah, with the remodel that I had, like we had that sliding ladder that went across the entire bar. It was nice.
And you had a crew that cleaned the floor and the grates.
Yeah, we had like I said, if you were a bartender at Cut, you were spoiled in a lot of ways. And one of those ways was we had a cleaning crew that would, after the shift, they would come burn your ice, they would clean your well, they would wipe down the well,
Wow.
the grates and like your cocktail rail, they would clean all that.
What a
So at the end of our shift, I mean, we still had like
You have a ton
cleaning
of
to do
work.
and
You have stuff to do
responsibilities
and wiping.
Yeah, exactly. Like we still had some cleaning to do. However, like we cleaned our bar tools and like put those away, dumped all of our like juices, fruits, and all that stuff, cleaned our garnish trays, things like that. But we left that well filthy every night. We had to take the bottles, wipe down the bottles, put them on top of the bar, and then the cleaning crew would come like after we all left, and they would clean everything for you, and the next day you'd come in and it's just a spotless bar.
Now I might say that's spoiled, but I also think that's like wise, right? So
Yeah.
it keeps if your bartenders are happier, they're giving a better product.
Mm-hmm.
They're paid, especially if they're like union, and you're getting paid union money. I don't think Cut was union, but like if you are in a union house and you're paying a bartender to clean rather than just like a cleaning crew, you're actually spending way more money in labor,
Exactly.
just
yeah.
overall
You're spending
cost.
that money and labor anyway. So it's like if they go home and then you have a cleaning crew comes in that you pay a certain amount for, like it works out. Plus, yeah,
Absolutely.
your bar staff is happy.
Yeah, and I'm pro that. Like I think that, when I have to do mats, it's I get it. That's part of being at a bar that doesn't have the kind of money to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, to not have to worry about mats and doing the floor at night really lets me focus on, making sure my banks are right. making sure my bottles are clean and all that stuff. I've never had anyone clean the grates for me, which that is beautiful.
Yeah.
God, I would love that. But you also there you have that raw bar right next to you too, so it kind of makes sense that they have to do a
Yeah, because
cleaning
they
through
would
there.
clean that as well. They would like burn all the chilled ice that the raw seafood was sitting on,
Yeah.
and
So that's
they
just
would
like
clean that whole station.
sensible.
Like, yeah,
And they
yeah,
spare no expense at Cut. I have to say, I if someone asks me like, oh, what's the best or where's the best place in town steakhouse, I'll be like, as far as if you want like the highest quality and like the most like legit service, I always recommend Cut. But I'm like, you're gonna pay for it, and they're not exactly like warm like other restaurants might be. A
yeah.
little more personable service, but that's kind of comes with that level of, and especially that it's a Japanese steakhouse. It's
Yeah. It's a Japanese steakhouse with a very like French style of service.
Yeah.
And like the chefs in the back and all that stuff. But I absolutely loved working there. I still respect the place a lot. So me now working at Chica, I'm right there in the Venetian, like just a 2-minute walk away from Cut. So I recommend it to guests all the time, like people that are asking for a good steak in the Venetian or a good, whiskey bar, stuff like that. I'm always sending people that direction.
Yeah,
It's a cool place.
I attribute like where I stepped up in bartending was because of Cut.
Yeah,
Well, Ryan Panigan,
yeah, love
he was like, I looked up to him a lot. He was there for like a year as the lead before I got there, and it was just very interesting. And like I would make, you play around, you make fun of some of your buddies at the bar, but
Yeah.
the way he would like talk about whiskey, he'd be like,
he took on that Japanese like
"This is a
style of
beautiful bottle.
bartending, and
This is so wonderful." He's like, "You see how they took time with the," and I'm just like, "Geez, this guy's like really going into it." And then
Yeah.
he would shake, and he'd be like,
yeah, that Japanese hard shake
man.
with style and flair. Like it's the whole thing about Japanese bartending, and that's what they really focused on at Cut is Japanese bartending. Embraces elegance with bartending. It's not that fast paced like pour spout like free pouring. Like
they're kind of like wasteful
everything
too, in a way. 'cause
everything they do is like elegant. They try to be like as quiet as possible and making the most like precise movements as possible. And they like think about everything like as far as like their stirring, their jigger work, their shaking, like they do everything with a purpose. And that's what we had to do at Cut is, do a lot of those bartending practices. So our jigger work, like you remember, like you're using a Japanese style jigger and you have to hold the jigger. And do you have a jigger? You
I don't have Japanese one.
like a Japanese style jigger.
Very thoughtful, very demure.
It was, yeah, very, very mindful. That's a perfect way to describe the Japanese style of bartending is it's very mindful
And
very
demure.
elegant, very demure. Do you see how I'm holding the jigger like this? I'm not like this. I'm not out here like this.
Oh my God.
Are very specific about how you hold the jigger with Japanese like style bartending and how we did that at Cut. And they use a cobbler shaker as opposed to like a Boston shaker. But they are very specific how you bartend at Cut. You have to have your cobbler shaker set up like this, the lid in the back, and when you're building the cocktail, you have to have the jigger, your finger up against the tin, pouring from here. They don't want to see you pouring out here and then bringing the liquid to it. They're very particular about having the jigger there so that after you reach that measurement, you could just make that simple dump. And like you're not doing it fast, like you have to do a nice, elegant.
That's why
like,
most
dump.
people don't end up going to the meniscus because they're afraid of that little spill.
Yeah.
And you'll see, like some people will be like up here, and then come down and do it, and you're like, "Geez, you're making this way harder than it needs to be."
Yeah. But I mean, I love it because like it does teach you like great skills and everything that you could take to like any other bar. But yeah, their shake was very specific. So you remember they have a Japanese hard shake. So the way you hold the cobbler, you have to hold it like into your chest, and you have to hit your points, your high and your low. Some people hit a mid, and they'll hit like 3 points. But that's the thing is you get that snap with the ice, especially if you're using the cold draft ice that they have at Cut,
It's so-
and that
it's
we
so
have at
sexy
Chica and
sound.
everything.
Clink,
Oh, I
clink, clink,
absolutely
clink, clink,
love cold draft ice. And
In a cobbler shaker specifically,
Any,
oh,
any bartender that starts using cold draft ice for the first time hates it
Hates it.
because it's so dense and the cubes are so big.
And most people aren't used to shaking hard.
Anyone that's used to like pillow ice and it's worked at bars with like pillow ice,
And you're done.
if they go to cold draft ice, they're like, this ice sucks.
Well, it
like,
takes
it's
you
so
twice as
hard.
long,
Like
too.
it's hard to like it like fills up a glass like too like in an awkward way. But you start getting used to it and like realizing the benefits of it, then you're just like, oh shit, like this ice is actually like really
The
good.
sex appeal in bartending can't be like understated. You like when just the sound of the ice clinking in a cobbler shaker actually even sounds better to me than a Boston
No,
shaker. But
it does.
Boston's are more practical because they don't have this little cap. But the nice thing is you can do you have this screen in here, so you get to double strain it that way as well. But learning how to use these and then like that's why now my shake evolved from working with these
Yeah.
so much for like a year that I was at Cut that now when I do a Boston shaker, I still kind of have my hands in the way I would hold my Japanese shaker.
As did mine. And my shake it improved dramatically because of that. And because before that, like Nora's was like pretty much my only bartending job. I've done like other stuff too, but I was at Nora's bartending for the longest time and I self-taught myself my shake and all that stuff. And I thought I had a good shake there.
Right.
Until I went to Cut.
Yeah.
And they adjusted my shake so much because they are very specific on like how you hold the shaker and how you shake that my shake improved. And I was just like, damn. Like I looked back like I used to shake like this. My elbows were flared out and I was going like this and it was a lot. And then I started being like more into like my chest and my elbows weren't flared. And then it became a lot more comfortable to shake because I remember I used to have like elbow problems sometimes. I'd be like, damn, like my arm is starting to hurt because I'm shaking so many cocktails. And like when I started doing like the cobbler shaker and like shaking all night in the well, I was comfortable at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Because like it's just more of an efficient shake.
I remember I got so mad because I'm shaking in the well, and then Matt Hurley comes out and he's like, he doesn't say it to me, he says it to Ryan, and then Ryan comes up to me and he's like, hey, you need to hit your points higher. The chef noticed that you weren't quite high enough on your point down and point up, and I'm like, tell him to get back there and work on it. But it was that's how serious they are. Even the chef. The chef is involved in the bartending, but I mean, he is a partner, so it makes sense.
And yeah, a lot of times, like he won't, like if you're in the well and you're working, he'll come up to you and he'll cross his arms and sit there and watch you
To make you feel the pressure?
To make you feel the pressure, and it's like you don't know like what he's nitpicking about what you're doing, but you know it's something. So you're like focused on everything. But they're like that there. So he would come out and he would check your peels and your garnishes to make sure all the garnishes were like symmetrical and cut properly. Limes had to be like an even cut. The center pith would have to be cut out.
I'm neurotic about fruit now.
Yeah, no, me too, absolutely. And that's just one of those things.
Like working events
made me a great bartender in that way as well because like it upped my standards as far as garnishes too. They're the way they did peels was
that was the
ridiculous.
only thing. That was the only thing because we wasted. That's what I was gonna say about like the wastefulness of Japanese bartending because they want to be so mise en place and so prepped and everything's ready that you end up throwing a lot of stuff out. And just like how when they make a traditional Toki highball or something, and they put a Collins sphere in there, stir it, remove that Collins sphere and put a fresh Collins, or not sphere, but Collins spear, and then put a fresh one in there. And you're like, damn, you just wasted a whole Collins cube to just chill that glass. But so like that's why, as much as I love Japanese bartending, I do think it's kind of funny how much like extra goes into it, and like you might actually end up wasting product for that mise en place. But that was the only thing I didn't love was I like fresh peels, but now like so at Bramare we have a branded peel, so we have those that are made like during the day before the shift, and what sucks about those is they get kind of a curl if you don't have it perfectly because our fridges are super cold.
Yeah, there's ways of storing fresh peels, and a lot of places won't do that. So like they'll peel before the shift, just so you're not doing it during the shift. But if you're not storing it properly, they do, and especially if they're a thin cut peel,
right,
where you're not getting like a lot of the pith.
And we brand them, so that changes the structure too.
Yeah, exactly. They'll really like start curling up,
exactly,
and that's hydrating.
There's a food grade thing that some restaurants have and some don't, but it's like a food grade, like not paper towel, but essentially.
Yeah.
And if you have that covered and it's not too cold, but like that, our fridges are pretty cold there because it shares space with other fridges because it's like one of those Tobin Ellis bars, the Perlick, where they have that pull out, which there's pros and cons to every bar style. I'm kind of excited to get behind Livio's Euro bar and see how that works.
Yeah, no,
functional.
I've seen like pictures of it. Like it looks really cool, and I've talked to Livio about it.
Really clean. And I like how much you can change it, like, because he's left-handed.
Yeah.
So he always thinks of the left-handed person, but he also knows that typical bartenders are right-handed.
Yeah.
So to have a station that's ambidextrous like that,
Yeah, that's
Pretty
definitely very
cool.
smart. And a lot of, bar setups at bars were not designed by bartenders. They were designed by, you know, just people that like are just setting up the cheapest possible thing in the small space. So I've been behind some bars that I'm like, man, like whoever designed this bar has never been behind a bar, never worked behind a bar. But then go behind some bars like Livio's bar or like the Perlick bar, where you're like, man, like you could tell whoever designed this has worked some shifts in some wells.
right? Yeah, and that's really the point is when a person that doesn't work a bar makes like any kind of bar, like let's not even talk about like the actual equipment that's in front of us, but like they're designing the back bar and the shelves look super sexy, but then you're like trying to put stuff in there, you're like, like the Gatsby's one, for example, had some really tall spaces and a lot of really small spots. So like as much as we wanted to have it categorized, we couldn't do it too much because it's like, okay, well, only the Japanese whiskeys, thank God they're all like short squat bottles except for like a Yamazaki. But like, so we had like one section like Japanese whiskey, but the Yamazaki doesn't fit there. So the Yamazaki's up here. And you're like, damn it, which is something I actually have to deal with on this one because, what I do hate about tequila bottles is they like so many of them are doing these tall, gaudy bottles, including Cierto, which I represent as a brand educator. But like if you look at that whole top rail, those are all they don't fit on any other shelf on this bar, and not even all of the tops because they're not like so perfect that So it's like, and then the Sincoro, when Steve Kennedy worked there, he gifted me a little bit of Sincoro. So I have those, and those don't even fit under that shelf where all the other tall bottles do. So it's like, you're always fighting like bottle design too, and these are just 750s. If it was like, it's
There's always those thoughts like after the bar is like built and everything where you're just like, damn, I wish we would have done it this way.
It is true though. It's like always easier to say that in hindsight because you've got so much going on a build, and you're like, you miss one thing, you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Exactly. But
Before we finish this, we should talk about the cocktail we're drinking.
Yeah.
You suggested Carajillo.
Yeah.
We talked. Usually, it's all equal parts.
Yeah. I do equal parts, espresso and liquor 43. Some people like a little bit more kick to it and do a little bit more espresso, for more caffeine. I've had it with more liquor 43 than
Comes off
espresso
a
as
little
well.
too
It is
sweet.
a little sweet that way.
Yeah.
I think, the sweetness of the liquor 43 and the bitterness of the espresso, like a perfect, even like 50-50 is
And
a
it
good
matters.
measurement.
It matters the espresso. This one's a Michele d'Oro, and that was we learned about that one at Vetri. We were working there. He actually has a great talent for the coffee designs, the barista coffee designs. I always would try to do it. Sometimes I can do like a heart or something like this. This guy's doing the feathers and
Yeah, no, I mean, I got into it, especially at Vetri. I was calling myself the bar barista because the espresso machine was behind the bar at Vetri. So it was like our responsibility as bartenders to also make the coffee. And I mean, I love that because I've always been like a coffee fanatic. Like I just drink a lot of coffee, and like I used to make my own coffees at Nora's and everything too. Never really got into like the designs, the like latte art or anything when I was working there, but I was making myself coffee every day. So I was like I bought an espresso machine at the house, and I was making espresso all the time at home. And then when we started working behind the bar at Vetri, that espresso machine was the best espresso machine to this day that I've ever used.
La Morzocco,
Yeah.
La Strada.
Damn, yeah, you remember the exact model and
Absolutely.
everything.
Because you're like, when people come in, I'd be like,
Yeah.
that's a $35,000 espresso machine.
No, it makes a huge difference. Like when you're making the coffee, like when you're pulling the espresso and everything, like it just feels right, looks right. Like it was a beautiful machine.
It really goes to show you though, like the difference of like the latte art on presentation. Like I know it's not necessary, but at a place like Vetri, I was kind of bummed that I couldn't like nail it every time because you're paying. It's not actually like at a restaurant. Like normally cappuccinos and espressi are the
Espresso.
they're like always like $4 to $6. They're never really too expensive, but you still like when you're at a place like Vetri or it's a white tablecloth that they iron. You're like, okay, I expect my coffee to be a little better than usual. So it's like if it's just a blob of foam, you're like, okay, I guess, I'm not complaining, but it'd be cool if they, So I was always appreciative that you were good at that.
Yeah. No, I was like watching like Instagram reels and stuff like that of like people doing latte art.
Yeah.
And kind of like picking up like how they were doing it, and it took a lot of like time and like practice, and like the like the quicker that you like, or the better that you get at it, like it just becomes more like natural, like the more often you do it. So those little tiny like things that you're doing, like when you're like steaming the milk and everything, like you start picking it up naturally. So every time you do it, those little things just come like more natural, and then the milk's perfect, and then you get good at the movements. But it definitely, it's not easy to pick up. It's not easy to do, but it's fun, and like I enjoy it.
Yeah. It kind of made me a fanatic. And then actually I was, just because I was lazy, I was buying like Starbucks espresso, like when I was at like Costco or whatever. And then Matt Rose comes over and I forgot what we were doing. I was working on a cocktail that had coffee in it or something. And he's just like, ugh, oh, what? This is burnt coffee. It's terrible. And I was like, I'm sorry. So then like
Matt
now,
Rose is a coffee aficionado.
yeah, well, he's just an aficionado, and he doesn't mince words. So I was like, oh man. That Eric Kluver also, he's tasted a few things, and he will be very blunt, honest with you. If you're like, I like this a lot, and he's like, this is awful. I hate this. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that because it's like, in this we were talking earlier that part of like brands and stuff, like working brand jobs, it's kind of like an ass kissing job a little bit. You're running around asking for, hey, like, will you pick up my spirit? And there's so many spirits to be around that you could pick from. It's like, oh, well, what do I really like this person enough to even carry their product? Like, what's the reason they're going to bring it in where something else is going to lose space on the back bar or whatever? So it's a lot of, hey, and plus, you try to like support the account, like with visits and stuff like that. But there's only so many accounts you can go to a day. There's only so much budget that you can spend on, drinks. Everyone sees you come in and they go, oh, like, oh, it's the guy. Like I remember Rob Amato, right? He was working for Frey Ranch for years, and he'd come in and even though he doesn't drink anymore, he will like buy like shots for the bar or like, hey, when you get off, if you want this or if you want to, if you want to sell a couple old fashions to people, and then you're always just like, damn, that's part of the gig, but then they don't see like all the stuff he's doing, all the phone calls he's doing, the visits he goes that are like before the opening of a bar. So it's not as glamorous. And I remember like everyone wants to go into brand work from bartending and they just think it's a bunch of partying and drinking.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, it's not. And then if you do drink too much and you're on that job, it's its own demon.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it's dangerous. And I'm sure not a lot of people think of that. Like when you are doing jobs like those, like a big part of your job is drinking, going to events and everything and drinking the product that you're representing, going into accounts and having to spend, and drinking products. So like if you're going to have a job like that, you definitely have to be responsible for it with it.
Yeah. I've learned that too. I was with Brown Foreman for a little bit, but honestly, I wasn't good at the timing. Like, I was just coming out of Gatsby's. So, and like at an 8, but with Gatsby's, you close at 4 at that time. And then you're not out till 5:30 if you're lucky. So that my sleep schedule was messed up. So once I go to brand work where it's like, oh, wake up at 8, get on a call by 9 or 10, it was like a different life. And I still had all my friends in the bar world that want to stay up till 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock and we're hanging out. So it's like, it was really hard for me to adjust to the schedule.
Yeah, no, it's a big adjustment. And that's the thing that a lot of people have to do when they're making that transition from bartending to brand work is it's a complete change in lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a 9 to 5 job, but it's definitely different than working graveyards or swing shift behind a bar.
Yeah.
Big transition.
So let's see. We talked about Cut, we talked about Chica, and we're actually low on our Carajillo, so it might be time for that.
Move on to the next one.
That Sazerac we were talking about.
Yeah. But a Carajillo is one of my favorite cocktails, and it's a cocktail that really shows that simplicity is great in a drink because this is 2 ingredients, just espresso, liquor 43, but it's got so much flavor. I like the nice orange peel over the top, orange peel expressed over the top, but it's definitely one of my go-tos. A lot of people have them after dinner, like as like a digestif, but like I start the night with a Cottaheel all the time.
Yeah, and what's funny is like I absolutely hate when someone has like a rocks coffee drink and they put the coffee beans in there. I'm like, that's not right. Like I granted that technically there's no garnish on a traditional Cottaheel, right? Like it's just actually it was pour over coffee or like regular coffee with like liquor 43. But I like the orange just because that liquor 43 has vanilla and orange notes. But I'll like at a lot of restaurants, some servers won't know like they won't want to ask or they don't like think enough into it. But I'm like, well, if you're having a rocks drink and you're going to start drinking with pebbles, do you want to eat like espresso?
Yeah.
Most people don't want to eat that. And it's like,
Some people do.
some people,
And yeah, I see those people with espresso martinis and everything all the time that are chewing on the espresso. And I'm like, all right, like that's you do
that's
you.
fine because that foam top holds them. You know where they are the whole time. You're not randomly getting it when you're not expecting it.
No, I completely agree with. I mean, I didn't really think of that like before that you could get mixed up with, you could get them mixed up with the rocks, but that completely makes sense. But I do like a nice orange peel with a Cottaheel.
Yeah. It's funny because I begged John Petty to put it on the
Tom Petty.
I begged John Petty to put it on the 8 Cigar Lounge because at the time the espresso martini was like it's always been kind of popular for the last like decade.
Yeah.
But it was like hitting really tough in
Blew up.
2021. And he's like, we need to have it on the menu. I'm like, as long as we show that there's an espresso drink on the menu, people will know that they can order espresso martini. It's just like one of those drinks like old fashioned. You're like, oh, can I get an old fashioned? You know that the bar can make it. Like, as long as you know they have espresso.
martini on the menu. Someone's
And I
gonna
hate
order
cold
it.
brew.
No,
I
yeah,
hate's a strong word, but like, because I'll still drink it if
Yeah.
you're in the mood for a pick me up. But the difference is substantial. You know what I mean? I can't stand cold brew, really any of that stuff. Like, if you don't have fresh espresso, just skip
It's a big difference between cold brew and espresso. Like the brewing process is completely different. Like, it's not as cold brew is not near as extracted as espresso is. So
Exactly.
it definitely does make a big difference.
And that's why you get
But
such
how
a
do you
nice
feel
crema,
about,
you know?
Pre-brewing espresso?
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, in a perfect world, you'd pour a shot each time, but then it's so hot that it dilutes the ice faster than you want. So you do want it to be cold enough. So if it's brand new fresh, it's not as an ideal cocktail. But once it's cooled down, you want to use it right there. But if you're at a place like Gatsby's where you're pumping out at certain times like 40 or 30 in an hour, you can't go. You're not going to send someone to bed. So we'd have like bottles. Now the problem is once you've brewed that much, that's expensive. So it's like,
And it only lasts for
24 hours at like technically like at best, you know, but
Yeah,
I've
I mean,
also
the
been
espresso starts to die and everything, and then it becomes like stale, and it's not as good or fresh. So I mean, I agree. Pre-batch what you need for that shift in that day, and then just every single day, bottle a certain amount of espresso.
yeah. And I actually I bought the what is it? The Barista Touch from Breville because I wanted to stop going to Starbucks because I'll go there and I'll get a mocha or whatever because it's like, oh, you're getting there. I'm like, I don't want just a black coffee. It's like, well, I'm at Starbucks, you know. So I'm like,
A peppermint mocha right now.
Oh, God.
Dude. I got one the other day. I was like, oh, I needed to. It's,
not a peppermint guy like that. The most I like peppermint is in my Amaro, you know.
oh, really?
Yeah. But
Peppermint Cottaheel.
interesting.
Really good.
I'm down for that. I would try it.
Yeah.
Maybe just like some Bronco Menta though thrown in there instead.
Yeah. Maybe like pumpkin spice during the fall.
Oh, we were talking about for your Friendsgiving coming up, making like a like Plymouth gin cocktail and a
yeah,
wild
for the
turkey
Pilgrim,
cocktail.
yeah.
That'd be
Exactly.
fun. You know,
Go
a
with
little
the
theme.
Yeah. So what do we have next?
Well, you said you wanted to do a Sazerac. Now, I usually do simple syrup. So we're going to do sugar this time, just granulated sugar. But with that, I would be making it in this. I know like it was made in the glass and then converted to another glass? Because like where does the ice go, right?
Because the Sazerac is chilled but served neat.
Right.
So yeah, you would essentially, like when I make a Sazerac, I make one in the mixing glass.
But now that we're using
And then
granulated
we'll
sugar and something's going to get left back.
I mean, we don't have to. We could do simple syrup. A lot of times at the bars that I work at, like I'll use simple because I don't have.
I'm in for it. I
granulated
want to
sugar,
try it. I
like,
want
behind
to
the
try
bar.
it with granulated sugar
Yeah.
because I've never had one that way.
Yeah.
And we also
I
talked
think
about
that was like the original way the Sazerac was made.
But I'm still going to make it in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
we'll lose a little bit to the ice, potentially.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to fully dilute all that sugar.
It takes a lot longer to dilute, like especially if it's not like warm water or anything. It takes a long time to dilute that sugar. So we'll definitely lose a little bit. That's my thing with like using granulated sugar cubes in cocktails is a lot of times it affects the consistency of the sweetness of the cocktail. So
Use these. I'll chill them down with these cubes.
perfect.
And so I always, with the Sazerac, I always like to put the lemon peel on the side. Actually, let me do it on here so it's not so loud on
Yeah.
the mics. I like to do
As
it
opposed to putting the lemon peel inside the cocktail.
right, because
Yeah.
it's supposed to be like some people want it left in and some people want it thrown
Yeah.
out after the expression. So I always put it on the rim as an intention.
I've learned the exact same thing. Yeah. So with the Sazerac, I will always express the lemon oils into the cocktail, and then leave the lemon peel on the side of the glass, giving the guest the option to drop it in the cocktail or not. So no, I've learned that exact same thing, and I like that. So here you're doing a bar spoon of
Yeah, bar
granulated
spoon
sugar.
per drink.
Yeah.
Big thing for me is the difference in Peychaud. Some places I see them just deck it out in Peychauds. Like I almost too much. Like
The
you know, to me it's supposed to be an old fashioned riff.
yeah.
So with that, it wouldn't be like sometimes I see people do like 9 dashes of like the bottle Peychauds, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah. No, yeah, the bottle page shots. With the bottle like that, I could see like nine dashes. Like I think a Sazerac should be a nice bright pink color, but not closer to red, you know, if they're using too much page out.
What rye were we gonna use?
Oh, I don't let's see what you have. Woody Creek, yeah.
Woody Creek looks good. Love Stella Cho.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically like when I do a Sazerac, I like a rye with like a high proof rye. Kind of cuts through the sugar in the peychaud.
Ooh, do we go crazy? Do cordon bleu? Maybe just some Henny VSO.
So right now we're doing a split base of rye and cognac. We're trying it out this way. We had a discussion. You know, the original Sazerac when the cocktail was created with cognac, and then after phylloxera, it became very difficult to get cognac. So the recipe was changed to rye. And some people will even do now a split base of rye and cognac in a Sazerac. I've never had one like that personally, but we're excited to try it.
Do you want to explain what phylloxera was?
Yeah, phylloxera was a outbreak of basically like a bug that would eat all of the grapes and basically destroy all of the grapes and vines and everything. France had a big phylloxera outbreak, and all of the grapes and they couldn't harvest it because it was destroyed. So it took a big hit on not only the cognac business but wine. So
Which actually boosted Scotch and stuff like that.
it did, yeah. Like I said, rye whiskey became the base of this spirit, and a lot of people, you know, especially like in Louisiana, cognac was the drink of choice for people. They started drinking whiskey because it was more easily accessible. But yeah, like Champagne and everything took a huge hit during that time because all of their grapes were destroyed from phylloxera.
So when that happened, the U.S. sent over the base grapevines, and so they had to graft the French grapes onto American grapevines because they were more hardy and more phylloxera repellent. Like they were more immune to it because we had an outbreak out here, but they had been able to genetically like grow
really?
resistance to it. That's what I was looking for.
Isn't that crazy how they do that?
Yeah, so then those French, you know, they're really snooty about their wine.
Yeah.
And it's funny because their base is American grapevines.
Mm-hmm.
So suck it, France.
Did you do the absinthe rinse?
I sprayed.
Oh, okay.
I actually
That's
much prefer
a
an atomizer.
beautiful color for a Sazerac. I mean, as far as the absinthe rinse, atomizer works perfect because with that, you're not wasting a lot of absinthe because a lot of people just pour it in the glass, swish it around, but they're doing like, 3/4 ounce or like an ounce of absinthe when they're doing that, swishing it around the glass, getting it on all the sides, and then dumping it out. You're wasting a lot of product that way. So using an atomizer is nice because with that, you're using a little bit less, but still getting a lot of the aromas on the glass. Sometimes, I don't have that at work, an atomizer with absinthe. So what I will do a lot of the time is I will fill the glass with crushed ice, and then I'll pour about a half ounce of absinthe into the glass with crushed ice, and then I'll take my mixing spoon and just stir that around for, a good 10 seconds, and that's chilling the glass with the crushed ice, as well as getting all of that absinthe on the side of the glass as well. And then I'll dump that crushed ice, it's still wasting about a half ounce of that absinthe, but the glass is going to be chilled, and you're going to have the nice aromas of the absinthe on the glass. Thank you. This is beautiful. I love how you did the lemon peel garnish.
The old Kane twist.
Garnish, yeah. So it's not, dropped in the glass. So like I have the option whether I want to take that lemon peel and put it in my cocktail or just leave it on the side for aromas. I like this.
Speaking of which, cheers.
Cheers.
But speaking of which, I cannot stand when someone takes like a lime, right, for a cocktail and just drops it in, and then you have to watch the guest put their fingers in the cocktail.
Same thing with like a cocktail cherry, like in a old fashioned or a Manhattan. Like if you do a cocktail cherry in a rocks glass with lots of ice with an old fashioned, and you don't have it like on a skewer or anything, it's just the cherry that's on the bottom of the glass, covered with that cocktail and ice, then you're just like, all right, well, I'm not going to get to that. Because even if I finish the drink, like it's still under ice. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and did we talk about how they fixed phylloxera for the French? I know you mentioned some of it, but did you talk about the grafting, how they grafted American vines onto the French? I was a little distracted while I was making my cocktail.
Well, from my understanding, they brought over the American vines, and then they had to graft the French onto those vines. So the base rootstock is American vines.
Ah, okay.
And, that's my understanding. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
It's been
no,
a while since
I remember that's like one of the first things that kind of sticks with you is like when you're starting to learn about spirits is that. And it always stuck with me that like the only reason there's sugar cane in the Caribbean was like Christopher Columbus took it from Spain, which was taken from Alexander the Great in India when he was battling all the way over to that side of the world, and then brought from India sugarcane and found a perfect climate once they brought it over to the Caribbean many years later.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
No, that's one of the things that I love about like spirits and learning about, alcohol is the history behind everything. And there's just so much history of like how everything became, the different styles of spirits that we have now. As far as even like as far as why we call things proof, why we barrel spirits, like all of it has so much history behind it.
Do you want to tell? I mean, I know a lot of our viewers right now are mostly bartenders and people in the industry, but for the people that aren't in the industry, let's talk about how we came to call it proof.
I mean, I've heard a couple things, but the United States is pretty much the only country that uses proof. Every other country uses ABV or alcohol percentage.
Oh, really? I figured I've never been overseas, only down to South America. But
if you go to Europe, and they're not gonna say this is 80 proof gin. They're gonna say this is 40% alcohol. Proof is a United States thing.
we just have to be different.
We just have to be different, yeah. And we learned a little bit about that in the Southern Wine and Spirits Academy, how European bottles and everything won't even say proof on it. It'll just say the alcohol percentage.
Right, and it's kind of like well, lighting gun, like will it light on fire?
Yeah,
it's like
that's kind of like the story that I heard about it. Is like back in the 1800s in like the Old West, a lot of spirits were being brought to different bars and stuff in different saloons in barrels. So they weren't getting it in packaged bottles. They were getting the whiskeys and stuff in barrels, and they were pouring it from the barrels into their own bottles for their saloon. or they would pour it from the barrel into your glass. And a lot of people at the time, a lot of bartenders and barkeeps were watering down their barrels in order to sell more of that product and, make that barrel last longer. And a lot of the cowboys, they caught on to this. So at the time, most whiskeys were above 50% alcohol, and they were coming,
I didn't know that.
because there wasn't a big, like they weren't proofing things down, because I don't know if it was like they just didn't have like the technology to like check the proof other than, seeing like if it was strong enough to light on fire.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of the technology that we have now, where they could just test it and be like, oh, this is the
It
proof
was
of
like
it.
gunpowder too, right? Like,
Yeah. So what the cowboys were doing is they'd go to a bar and they would take some of the gunpowder that they had with them for their guns, and they would put it on the bar top, just the gunpowder, and they would pour their whiskey over the gunpowder, and then they would try to light it on fire. And if it didn't light on fire, that meant it was under 50% alcohol. So
You sidewinder.
that meant the bartender was watering down the whiskey. Then the cowboys would get pretty pissed off and, maybe pull a gun on the barkeep.
There's a lot of culture rooted in bar culture. Like when we're talking about how before Prohibition, the bartender was like an esteemed position, a position for, almost equivalent to like a politician, because all the politicians were hanging out at their bars talking, and that's where you could go and get away from the crowd and have a drink and talk with someone in sort of private with your barkeep nearby, So the barkeep's actually kind of has a pulse on all of society, knows what's going on, knows what laws are going to be put into effect. Like back then, I imagine, if you were smart and had money, you could have invested in the stock market based on what you're hearing at that place. You're like, ooh, they're going to pass through some of this. So it's like the bartender life, and even still true to this day, is like,
Oh, yeah.
we deal with every type of person. Everybody sits at a bar at some point in their life. You know what I mean? So it's like, I really do meet such a diverse group of people and cultures and everything. So I really do feel it makes you more world, for someone that doesn't travel much. It makes you feel a little more worldly, because I've met people from all around the world, especially working on Las Vegas Strip, because it's like, and especially the Venetian.
There's so many people from so many different, parts of the world that do so many different things and have so many different like jobs and have so many different interests, that you're talking, like we have full conversations with people as bartenders, and a lot of times we're not sharing our lives with them, they're sharing their lives with us. So we're learning about a lot of things, from where they're from to what they do, the things they're interested in. So I always say, like, as a bartender, there's not a lot of things that I know a lot about, but I know a little bit about a lot of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, like, I've even gotten like stock tips from people, and, I got a lawyer through being a bartender. I know I have a specific lawyer that I've met through people that like, this is your guy,
You're kind of networking while you're working.
I mean, when I was at Capitol Grill, it was like Politician Central, because I always say Capitol Grill and places like Capitol Grill, Fleming's, whatever. Those are like Applebee's for the rich, because like once you're worth a certain amount, you stop going to Applebee's, and when you want a burger, you go to Capitol Grill and get like a steakhouse burger. And so during lunch, you'd have like Democratic lobbyists out over here, and then like the next day you'd have Republican lobbyists over here, and you're just like, wow. And you're hearing what's being talked about and policies going through and stuff like that. It's pretty wild. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be a bartender. I feel like it's really showed, because like a lot of people, if you have an office job, you see the same people every day, like the same 7 people for years.
Yeah.
You go to lunch together,
like doing the same thing every day, talking to the same people every day.
Now,
No.
I can't imagine a job where you sit down all the time.
Yeah. I
Personally.
mean, bartending, especially, if you're working one job and you're like behind one bar, you're kind of, at the same place every day. And that's, you're going to the same place every day. Seeing
Yeah, but it's
different
people every day.
Yeah.
And another thing is, it's a very revolving door. Some people, you'll see like a core 5 that's like stays at a bar forever, or a restaurant.
Yeah.
But then you'll see the rest of the staff is like within a year they've rotated out or went to another place.
Yeah.
That's the other part of this industry is like we're always looking for the next best thing, or you know, I feel like it's something with bartending and hospitality in general is we're antsy people.
Yeah.
You know, like you're like, oh, well, I heard we can make more money over here, so I'm gonna go over there, you know, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, what's wrong with here? You're like, well, it's not as good as there, I heard. And then you go over there.
Yeah. It's like there's not really anything wrong with here. It's just
Yeah.
just want to try something different.
Right.
Yeah, you get antsy.
Like
You know?
I've worked in a million places, and no one's worked more places than Shoemaker. I think he's like worked at every single place in town. But
He's got a lot of good experience, and he's worked at some really cool places that like I would have loved to work at.
absolutely.
So
Well, he's going to Bourbon Steak now.
I know he's got a good gig coming up. But yeah, like Nora's, I was at Nora's for 10 and a half years of my life, you know, and that's a long time to stay at a place.
That is
And-
crazy. In this world, that
Yeah.
is like you should get a pension.
Yeah. No, I started off as a bar back when I was 17 years old. Not a bar back, I'm sorry. I started off as a busser when I was 17 years old and I did like every front of the house position there until I started, you know, behind the bar, did bar back and then bartend and then became the bar manager. But I just went I went as far as I could there, you know, into where I started feeling like complacent, and that's why I had to leave. But absolutely love that place. Like if I could have stayed there longer and been happy, you know, because it's just one of those places. And I think everyone just needs to find that spot.
It's like when you get out of high school, from like 18 to 21, don't go to college first because you don't know what you want. Like everyone that goes to college right out at
Oh, yeah.
18, they're never doing what they planned on doing.
Most
They never
people don't.
have the degree for what they need, especially in this industry. I know so many people that are lifers at college that are also going to work every day, and you're just like, why are you like, oh, I'm getting my master's. I'm like, but you're still here. It's been 8 years. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine, but I don't understand going right out of high school and like everyone when you're 18, whatever you're gonna want when you're 18, you're not gonna want anymore when you're 26.
Exactly. And that's a big decision to make. Like when you're right out of high school, it's like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So I think if you
Something
leave
that-
high school, you should go to a restaurant and work for 3 years at restaurants. I don't care what role. Me, obviously, you can't be a bartender in Vegas, but some places you can be a bartender at 18. But like, and just learn that, like, just being a host, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with people that are rude for no reason, or really nice, or bring you gifts, or like just showing you that different walks of life, and you go like, oh, they're really nice. What do you do? And then they learn through that what they might want to end up doing in their life. So to me, it's like rushing into college is a terrible decision these days because, you know, I just like I said, I don't know anybody that has a degree in what they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like even my sister, she has a degree and now she's a real estate person that does loans and stuff. It has nothing to do with her
Because
college
they made that
degree.
decision when they were younger. And
Because they're like, just
then
go to
they,
college.
and then they
Just go
changed
to
their
college.
mind.
You're like,
Yeah.
well, what do you want to do? Like, I don't know.
And
Just go to
I've
college.
I've seen a lot of people do that, especially in the service industry, where they get that service industry job while they're going to school, and then they get stuck in it because hey, service industry, especially here in Las Vegas, is great money.
and flexible schedule.
There's a reason that we've been doing it for so long because you make a career out of it, you know. And so a lot of the times that people are going to school for something while they're working in the industry, they don't want to leave that job to get a starter job in their career that they went to school for because that they're going to take a big pay cut because they're not going to be making as much money even with a degree as they would in the service industry. So I mean, I don't want to say it as a negative thing, like, hey, you're going to be stuck in the service industry, because I mean, it's not really a negative thing. Like,
Right.
especially here, you make a career out of it, and it's great. But
I think it keeps you young too in some ways. Obviously,
a lot of people will go to
it's hard on
school
the
for
body.
something and then completely forget about it because, you know, they're making more money staying in the service industry.
Well, and then you have the person that's like, oh, I got a real job. They're like, where? At a dentist's office. I'm like, making how much?
That's
Like $18
that's a
an
real
hour.
job. Okay.
I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Well, you know, like on
Yeah.
at a good place. Don't get me wrong. Like the typical, especially like starter jobs, if you're making 200 a night, you're doing great, right? In tips, like on your I feel like Carrabba's when I first started working in restaurants at all. I feel like it was like, and now this is a long time ago, like 2012.
Yeah.
But that it didn't. The money was like probably like 150 a night was like a good night there. You know what I mean? And like if you made 200, you were crushing it. at that kind of a place. But at the same time, my skills were low. Like I didn't know shit, right? And then like I'm learning from two guys that were really cool, and I thought they were like the cool guys, and they are cool guys, but like they were also kind of already jaded, and they were like much older and had been probably doing this for 15 years at this point, and they're at Carrabba's, and they're just kind of like, yeah, yeah, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
and I still friends with both of them, but it's just like they didn't they taught me how to deal with people, which was cool because they like at your regulars at a bar at a place like Carrabba's are like, you know, the group of like there was like specifically at Carrabba's there was like five guys that would come in and they were like they thought they were like the Rat Pack, and you know they go and like flirt with the host and you're like, dude, you're 60, but
I know exactly what guys you're talking about.
yeah, and you're like we have our set of those at Nora's and
I think
at
every bar's got a set
absolutely.
of those. They're always flirting with the hostesses. And
But then once you get into the higher end concepts, it ends up being more like, you know, just dates. And like your regulars is like a guy and a girl. And it's like maybe the guy's bringing his dates there and he has like multiple different dates that he takes there. And you don't mention the previous date. You're like, oh, it's great to see you again, you know?
yeah,
And, you know, because it's like you don't know what they did, who they came in there on those days. And like at places like, again,
you just give him the look, so he's just careful around you.
well, and that's when you actually have your trusted people where they're like, okay, I can take them. Like I'm at Fleming's, you know, and you've got like certain people who are like, oh, who are you bringing in today? Well, okay, I haven't seen her before. You know what I mean? And you're like, but that's what, because like I said, it's the Applebee's for the rich. Like they're not going to go to a normal bar, like a normal bar or restaurant for them is a steakhouse. And, you know, I think it's pretty interesting to see, you know, but,
I think one of the main pros of the service industry is that when you clock out and you're done, you're done. Ain't nobody calling you to
No,
they're not
exactly.
sending you
I mean,
emails. Like,
Yeah, depending on the job that you have. Like, I mean, when I was a bar manager, I was taking work home all the time. But that's what I love about just bartending is you clock out and you're not taking any responsibility home, any work, no stress. I clock out, go home, and show back up the next day. It's nice.
that's when you asked me if I wanted to work at Chica. And I remember originally trying to talk you out of going to Chica. And I was just like, you're not going to like it. You need an advanced program, which it's got like Danny's the bar lead and he's great. And Bo was the bar lead before that and he's the manager.
They're both very passionate.
They're awesome. They
very
know what they're doing.
passionate
But
people.
at a concept like that, it's like you have to play to the concept and it's Margarita Central.
Yeah.
And Margarita builds with
Yeah.
rims. You know what I mean? And it's such a high volume bar that you're not going to geek the heck out.
Yeah.
You know, with a guest. You're not going to geek the heck out with a guest.
Yeah.
But once I got there, you know, and I was like I said, I'm done. I don't want to run a bar program. I freaking loved it because I'm just like you go in there, especially Friday, Saturday nights.
It's fun. The people that work there are awesome. You know, you go in, you do your job. You know, you provide a great experience for the guests, and then you go home.
That I want to mention Chica nights, Friday and Saturday. I know they're long nights, but I love those nights.
Yeah.
And it actually reminded me of Gatsby's in a lot of ways because it's like
Yeah.
the energy gets a hold of you too. Like if I'm dancing, you know what I mean? Like because on Chica nights they start at 9 and it ends at 11.
No, it ends at 1 a.m.
Oh no,
But yeah, 1 a.m.
9 to 1.
9 to 1 a.m. Yeah, there's a
Or is
DJ.
that the right time? It's 9.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
9 o'clock the DJ goes on, and then like it goes until 1 a.m. and then the DJ is playing fun music, gets people up on the dance floor. The bar, we kind of like take some chairs out of the bar and make it more of like a walk up and order service kind of bar.
And it's every half an hour, or it's every hour.
It's every hour on the half hour.
half hour.
We do like a dance. So
and a
like,
conga line.
a conga line. We have dancers. They get on top of the bar, and you know they're
It's very sexy.
They're
It's
dancing.
very like dark and chic, and
Yeah,
I
and
enjoy those nights.
no, it becomes a fun atmosphere, and like you said, like it kind of gets you into that like good mood because like the music is playing, everybody's dancing. Like I'm dancing while I'm bartending. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a good time, and this Chica's the first place that I've ever worked that was like that because like my bartending experience is in restaurants, you know, so it's always like, you know, fine dining restaurants and everything where it's just like
a little slower pace.
exactly. But this is the first place
quieter.
I've worked that's like has that like that high volume, fast paced kind of almost like not club bartending, but like you get a little taste of that, and I like it because it's a fun atmosphere to work in, and it's different than the mixology bartending and stuff like that, and the really like advanced cocktail program bartending that I've done in the past too. So it's fun.
I remember when I got there, and I've been doing events with my company, Raise the Bar, for a while, and I had taken a little time off of bartending at like a restaurant or a bar. So when you're doing event bartending, 90% of your cocktails, and it's mostly wine pours, whiskeys, and then like vodka soda, maybe a margarita. You don't need to be super fast. It's it's like, obviously you're not wasting time, but it's just really casual. And then it's like I get to Chica, and you got a bunch of it's mostly men back there, and they're all like in good shape, and then they're crank clank. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And I just remember like having to get my muscle memory back to where I was like, all right, we can do this faster. You know what I mean?
You gotta be quick.
And I know you take so much pride in how fast you are.
It's fast-paced bartending, but it's not like just vodka sodas all night.
No, yeah, it's full cocktails.
You're pumping out their cocktail menus like pretty intricate, and you're making margaritas and everything all night, and like salt rims and all that stuff. So like it's fast-paced bartending, but you got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun. Like
absolutely,
I love it. But you get that little taste of that like club bartending and stuff, which I think would be fun too. But that's a whole different style of bartending.
It's not passionate bartending when you're at a club.
No, I mean it could be. I'm not saying like
I don't know. I don't know the club bartender that's like vodka sodas. You know what I mean? But it's like
could be. I don't know, but I could find the fun in that.
Oh, I mean, if you like the music at your venue,
it's not necessarily
it's not that they don't
you're
like
passionate about
especially with the money
of like cocktails or anything, but I think you could still be like passionate about like making drinks and like.
I mean, like you. That's fair, and I mean it to say like there's still good hospitality at a lot of these places. Like, don't get me wrong, not everybody. A lot of times
they
could be the head down
because like you don't even have
until they're ready to talk to you. They don't look at you.
No, a lot of those places are like that. Like
which I'm like, make eye contact, give me a number.
Like,
hey, 10 drinks ahead of you. You know what I mean? And
like, what do you want? And then they'll tell you, and then you make it, and then you tell them the price. That's all you say to the guest.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It is a whole different style of bartending than what we're used to, and this different style of hospitality.
But where like passion,
but it has its place,
and being good at that job is like smiling when they come up.
I can see where it's fun. Yeah.
So that's where like you're saying, you can be passionate and do that stuff. But to me, that's more of like a financial decision. Like you're an idiot not to take that job. First of all,
those are the money making jobs, and that's the whole thing with bartending is like you just got to find the kind of bartender you like and the place that fits you best. Like it could be, one of those fast-paced jobs, or it could be a really intricate cocktail bar that's, making really great cocktails.
Two things I wanted to bring up about that. One, we mentioned before we started filming about like longevity and injuries and like where do you see yourself after a certain amount of time, because I know a girl right now that's getting out of pool bartending and stuff because she's like, eventually I'm not going to get the job and I don't want to wait until I get pushed out or aged out. Mm-hmm. And it's a little harder for women in that sense, like those really great paying club and pool jobs. Exactly. It's a small window, basically. Don't get me wrong. There's 30 something year olds doing it, but it's you watch, like it's a young woman's thing. And then same thing with like bartenders, like I wasn't in bad shape, but a bunch of the pools that I tried out for, I'm not like strapping at that time. And like, I'm like, why didn't I get the job? I had a recommendation and whatever. And it's like, but I know some hunky Gaston came in and was like, yeah, I'll bartend. You know what I mean? And it's like, he didn't have to necessarily know shit. It's like, oh, do you sell sex appeal? Yeah. So that's why like the clubs do have a time limit, but that's why it is also like get in when you can, make the money.
Make your money because those kind of bars and that kind of bartending, like you're gonna make better money than you would at those cocktail bars, even though it may not. It's very different.
This is a town though that if you find a good stride, like even if it's like, okay, the woman that we're saying it might age out of the good jobs at the pool. If you're good and you're good with staff and you're good with the management, which everyone should just work to be, it doesn't make sense not to be cool with management, but they will get you, they'll find a spot for you. You know what I mean? Like if you're an adult enough to say, hey, dude, I need to find out what I'm going to do next because I'm getting older and I know I'm not going to always get this job, they'll be like, oh, you want to be like a manager? Or do you want to move? You know, so loyalty does get you somewhere in this town. John Petty really made that clear to me too.
John Petty, not Tom Petty.
Exactly. And I talk about him a lot because he's a great and he's a great guy like for operation and teaching me like how to make a functional business. You're gonna get back here and make a black Manhattan.
Oh yeah, I'll come back.
Make sure your
and make
mise
the
en
next drink.
place is good. You got stir spoon. I'm gonna prep you some ice real quick.
Cool.
Hop on back. Yeah, burn it. Let me switch this water. All right.
Can I just say your home bar setup is amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of those things where I didn't realize what I was doing. And we were talking about that today too, that you went, when you first came here, when we first hung out, I had two bookshelves. And then it went to 3. Then when I added to 4, that's when it went to this wall.
I've seen it grow, and I've seen you like switch it up and do different things with it. But
I was thinking of moving
it's
things
probably
around again.
The best home bar setup that I've ever seen.
Wow, thanks, man. And you have a beautiful bar too. Similar build. Not quite as much inventory.
No, but
You know, that's normally the first question people ask. Like, how many bottles is that? I'm like, dude, I don't even know. It's like, gotta be 800. And plus,
you don't
there's
do inventory every month back there.
I did it once, and it took like 2 days. I obviously wasn't being the most fastidious or tedious and on top of it. It was like watching some YouTube while I'm doing it. But yeah, so your Verna should be visible right there. We said rye? We use Woody Creek. Let's see. Use Alpine. Use Alpine rye. It's not available in Vegas, but you can go to Utah and get it. Yes, sir. The difference between droppers and stuff. That's very interesting because these ones are actually pretty hefty. I like these ones the best for most of these dashers.
They're in a bottle getting a little sticky on the top.
Oh, dude, that's
Making me look weak back here.
not at all, not at all. We were just gonna move the camera from one angle to the other. But no, so the dasher is very important. It's funny, the little things that when you do care about what you're doing, you actually pay attention to the differences, and then other people might they know the rules, so it's like 2 dashes, and then they do 2 dashes, but it's like, what's the 2? Go up next to the Garrison. It's got like a red strike right up there in the right corner. Boom. Alpine rye. Yeah. Sarah Sargent does the gin and everything, and then you have Rob Sargent does the whiskey for this company, and I do brand education for them as well. I notice you have sort of a tilt, sort of a tilty sort of
Do I?
of a pour.
Tilty pour?
Yeah, it's a tilty pour.
All right, I'll work on it.
Well, I love when we were at Chica and we were
Proof rye.
right.
Nice, perfect.
Was that a good idea? Was the barrel proof too much?
I like a nice, strong, heavy proof rye with a Manhattan. So even a black Manhattan, but especially a regular Manhattan. We're doing sweet vermouth because that heavy proof kind of cuts through the sweetness of the sweet vermouth. So
Yeah, this is my preferred Manhattan. To be honest with you, I'm not a big.
I love a black Manhattan. That's why I chose this one.
I need it to be. I don't know. I like vermouth with like Campari. I don't like just whiskey and vermouth. I mean, I know there's bitters in a Manhattan too, but to me, it's just that's not my. And I love when I see a young person order a Manhattan. I'm always like,
Yeah.
well done, sir.
Manhattan was my go-to for like my 20s.
You never see
Loved 'em.
young women order Manhattans.
Loved them.
You see some young
kind of
men.
switched to Boulevardier since then. However, I still to this day love a regular Manhattan.
I'm a Negroni over Boulevardier, but I'm a Mezcal Negroni over Negroni most times. I love a Mezcal Negroni, especially if it's a Legal.
I'm gonna use
I also like the producer. Their Tepestate is good, but it might be changing. I don't know. I've heard some things through the grapevine that, they have they might have different purveyors. I don't know that to be true. I just know that there's a little rumor that it might be changing. So I'm interested to try because it's my favorite Tepestate. But that's why every year, like every so often, if you taste the batch next to another, like the last year's batch, you won't notice a difference. But if you taste Johnny Walker from 30 years ago, it'll be vastly different than the Johnny Walker made currently. Like because those subtle differences throughout the years.
I always call it the telephone game, because it's like the telephone game is when you're telling somebody next to you something, and then if you just keep transferring that message through person to person, it's going to get switched up a little bit. That's the same thing that happens with blending every year. Is those master blenders are tasting the product from the year before, and they're trying their best to get to that consistent flavor. However, there's going to be subtle differences every time. So if you're going to taste something one year and then taste that product 20 years later, even though every year the subtlety is smaller and smaller, over 20 years,
It's vast.
It's vast, yeah. So it's like the telephone game. But those master blenders, like their job is crazy, and they do a really good job at tasting a product and being like, all right, this is that flavor that we're going for. So we're going to blend a little bit of this bottle or barrel, a little bit of this barrel, a little bit of that barrel, and get that consistent product almost every year. It's wild. It's not like Coca-Cola has that recipe that they follow every year. Like with spirits, like you're working with
living things.
Living things. Like you're working with the air.
The fermentation part is very
weather. You're exactly
fluctuation.
Yeah, fermentation. Like everything plays a factor. The crops and everything. Whether it's the corn or the rye or the barley and everything that you're using, like everything.
Yeah, what was it like that year? When you have a lemon, sometimes it's sweeter, sometimes it's not.
Exactly.
Like so, it's
everything plays a big factor. So like,
now,
I think that is one of the coolest and craziest jobs ever, is being a master blender.
Which we should say, there's more women master blenders than anyone. I think.
Our garnish on this black. Are we doing a cherry? Are we doing a?
I believe it's lemon peel on Black Manhattan. I believe.
Perfect.
But the women make excellent master blenders. So by just the laws of biology, women have better olfactory senses than men, which is why there's more men that have like colorblind too. Like we don't see as many colors on. I mean, I shouldn't say it like that. It's like we have more of a propensity to be colorblind than women. Mm-hmm. They have a better sense of smell in general than men. And I base like everything in life off of evolution, right? And it just makes sense. But man, you'll see like Johnny Walker's master blender, I believe, is a female. A lot of the master blenders for the big brands are women. Really? I want to say if it's not 50-50 it might even be heavy on women, because that makes sense. You can't taste spirits all day and expect to blend them well. Your palate's going to change. So really a master blender is a master smeller, because they're doing aroma more than anything, because you can do that all day, even though it burns your olfactory senses out a little bit. You get fatigued. But with them, if they were to taste every spirit all day long, then they wouldn't be able to do their job. Yeah. So even if you're spitting at all times, you're still going to get a little residual, that stays with you and absorbs into your mouth. So after 15 or 20 tastes of different barrels, you're going to end up feeling it whether you're spitting or not. And that's why having a great olfactory sense makes you an excellent blender, which is why you're seeing more and more women become the master blenders for these distilleries.
Wow.
And I mean, Sarah Sargent is a perfect example. She goes around the world talking about botanicals. So and she sourced, for Alpine Gin, which has got a beautiful bottle. When you're done doing the garnish, bust that out. But it's got a beautiful bottle that has.
Where's that at?
It's down there, right behind the Tanqueray. What bottle? The Alpine Gin. Right to where the gins are, right there, and then right behind the Tanqueray. Boom. Ooh.
There she is.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Right there.
Yeah. So what you see here is here. Let's cheers.
Cheers.
This looks beautiful.
I did the old Kane garnish there.
Kane garnish. I can't do anything in life without giving credit to the person that taught me, because it's like this whole business is handed down information, and who you've made your friends and who've been. I call so many people my mentor because it doesn't have to be
you
someone
learn
that
so much from so many people. And
J.R. Starkus is one of
every
my biggest mentors. Livio
Yeah.
Laro, Francesco Lafrancone. I mean, even like Ryan doesn't think of it in this way to me, but he is a huge mentor.
I've learned a lot from him. Like it's the thing is, especially if you've worked at several bars and you've worked with different bartenders, you just pick up so many different things from each bartender that you've worked with, and you just learn from each other. That's what I love about bartending. There's so much like respect behind it too.
So what I love about this oh, go ahead.
What makes the Black Manhattan black?
Is the Averna instead of sweet vermouth. So I mean, Averna is an Amaro. It's on the darker side as far as like color and everything is. I think that's why they call it a Black Manhattan. I think Averna is the proper Amaro for a Black Manhattan. Like it's what the Black Manhattan was created with, right? You can do a Black Manhattan with different Amaro, but Amaro just changes so much as far as flavor profile and style and everything. So you just gotta be careful with like what you're using and like what's gonna blend well with the whiskey that you're using and everything as well.
You still follow the recipe of Manhattan?
Yeah, so it's the exact same recipe. So Manhattan is 212, so it's the area code of Manhattan is 212, and that you just follow that. So it's 2 ounces of base spirit, which is going to be
Generally
rye. You could do
like
bourbon, yeah. And then it's going to be 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. In this case, we're substituting that for Amaro, and then 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. So you just follow that simple recipe of 212. You just do the same thing with the Black Manhattan. You can change the Amaro out. So like Ramazzotti, I think is a good Amaro to use for a Black
And if
Manhattan
you look at the
as well.
back bar, it's actually organized because Amaro's my guilty pleasure. Pardon me.
Yeah.
So if you look, it goes from the Fernet at the top left to then as you go to the right, it gets a little more pastry-like and a little sweeter, and then to the next row down, it goes more pastry all the way to extreme pastry. Whereas like Montenegro, and even though Amaro Nonino is 35% ABV, 70 proof, it's still very pastry-like with that marzipan and orange peel and
Orange, yeah.
yeah. So I have that all the way on far right. You can't even see it right here, but and then Montenegro, and then right to the left of that's Ramazzotti and Averna, and I Livio really laid it out to me. He has a great, if you know Livio Laro's Master Your Glass channel on YouTube, it's incredible. He really teaches you a lot. I love his comparisons. And he said those are like kind of what the people really enjoy watching, as far as like what are the ones that he gets the most views on. He was saying it's people really want to know the comparisons, which is why I'm looking forward to when we do cocktail labs here and we compare like 3 different old fashions against each other, but all the same, like a Wisconsin old fashioned, a pre-prohibition and a post-prohibition old fashioned.
All very different.
All very different, all correct. But and I mean, like, somewhat, dude, our Wisconsin fans aren't gonna like that guy. I know exactly what you're thinking. But like, man,
I don't want to lose a big part of your viewership already.
no, I want them to talk shit in the comments. Honestly, that'd be
Everyone
great.
from Wisconsin,
Yeah, lay into us.
unsubscribe.
Let us know.
Unsubscribe.
Yeah, all 20 people. I do wanted to say about this Alpine, what I love about it. So the bottle itself is supposed to be kind of the horizon, the view of the mountain range, and then she actually put the recipe exactly as it goes in the basket because this is vapor extracted. So she made her own patented still. Looks like a really cool pressure cooker, and it goes from you make basically vodka, and then it goes through a chamber, and then it gets more distilled with the vapors from the fresh lemon peel, the fresh coriander, the fresh angelica root, juniper, obviously. So you see the recipe, right? Juniper centric, and then this is how much there's like just a touch of ginger and angelica, but it really and it's called, and we say it's a non-floral gin, fruits and berries, right? But she sources from specific places. She goes all around the world talking about botanicals, and like I know I think the angelica root comes from like Croatia. She gets the ginger from somewhere, I think in China or India. I can't remember exactly, but like it wasn't just like, oh, where do we get bulk this? It was like, This is where they make
very
it the best.
specific about
Absolutely.
where she's getting her stuff.
And that I attribute that to like a woman's ability to actually decipher. Like me, my nose is not great. Like I try, and I've trained my nose to be better than it was when I started, years ago, over a decade ago. But it's like I still struggle to find certain notes. Obviously, we've gotten so used to smelling that we know what's going to be there, and it kind of plants that thought in your head. You're like, well, I know I'm going to get like a little vanilla. It's like, you know what limousine oak versus American white oak does, right? The difference of the grain tightness, whereas limousine oak from the limousine forest in France, very tight grain, firmer wood that has less breathability. Where when you're aging a spirit in that oak, you're getting less wood influence if you have the same amount of time with American white oak that would be like used for bourbon, for example. And that the difference of flavors that you get from those two different woods, which is crazy because like it's wood. Doesn't it taste like wood?
Wood lactones it's essentially the different wood gives off like different flavors. Like American oak will give off flavors of like dill and things like that, and then the French oak will give off like vanilla, dill, coconut, and stuff with American oak, and then
baking spices with limousine oak,
with
and a
the
little more
French
controlled
limousine,
oxidation, less oxidation than the bourbon
crazy.
barrel.
But those are things like you have to like dissect and like study and all that stuff. But I haven't heard that necessarily that women are like better at deciphering those flavors and like have better like aromas or the sense of smell and everything. I'm not arguing that at all. Like that makes sense.
Well, I attribute it to evolution. Like the reason men are brawny is because we were the ones that have to protect the family. Like we go out there, she's protecting the kids. Again, I go back to like caveman days, and it's like they have to protect the kids, so they have to go like, I smell something coming, like get out there, and then it's our job to be like, bye, bye, honey. Hopefully he comes back. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm very traditional in that sense. So I believe
it makes sense because like dude, my girlfriend, she's got a better sense of smell and everything than I do. And like even the other day we were at a restaurant.
You've been doing this for freaking years.
I know. I was having mashed potatoes and there was like a flavor in there that was like it was pretty strong that I thought it was like too much of. And I was like, wait, what is this? And then she like tasted it and she's like, oh, it's thyme. And I was like, oh fuck. Like right when she said it, I was like,
son of a bitch.
That is a very strong like thyme flavor.
She's like, you can't smell thyme?
Yeah, I don't know. But no, I agree that women have like a better sense of like taste and smell.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually curious to look that up. How many of the world's blenders? Because I know it's increasing, exponentially.
I haven't heard that, but definitely a well-respected job.
Absolutely, my God, that's like,
yeah.
There's that, and then there's a master distiller at that kind of level. It's pretty epic.
Master distillers, the master blenders, like it's crazy the work that they do to get such a great consistent product.
But
I did want to get back to talking a little bit about Amaro because we started that for a second.
Let's switch spots real quick.
And
so let's bust out an Amaro or two real quick to finish this off and say our salutations.
And Amaro is probably the best way to finish off any dinner conversation or anything. So
I have to also say this, like
I'm down for an Amaro.
Being the guy that used to run the cart at Vetri and everything, I'm obsessed with like being correct on that. And it's like I can't tell you how like even people that have been working with Amaro for 2 decades, they'll call it Amaros.
Yeah.
But
Did I do it?
No, I don't think you did. No,
I
think you've been spot on. But I'm around people that are much more knowledgeable than me on spirits.
Yeah.
But then they'll say like Amaro, and I'm like,
I'll just say Amaro instead of
right.
Amari.
You can say Amaro, and then there's Amari, but you can't
But-
put an S on the end of an O in Italian.
I think I did say it because like I'd say like I don't know, but like sometimes I'll say like I love Amaro, but it's like okay, well which Amaro do you love?
What should we try?
I love Amari. But you said it earlier in this conversation. You said espressi instead of espresso, and to me that's funny because nobody says espresso.
No one says that.
And
it's annoying like that.
We had this conversation one time too because there's so many things in Italian that in plural it is with a E at the end, but like Barolo, like you don't hear many people say like I only drink Baroli. Like, that sounds ridiculous, but the plural of Barolo is Baroli.
All right, so I've laid it out. I wanted to try this. I think I might have busted this open, but I wanted to revisit. Again, I have a rule. If I go into a liquor store and I see an Amaro that I don't have, I must buy it. It's just a fact. Fernet as a category is the lowest sugar of all Amaro, and it is normally very herbaceous and alpine forward. So that's kind of like when someone's like, a lot of people try Fernet and then say, I hate Amaro. And you're like, you hate Amaro because you were shown the wrong Amaro first. Fernet's excellent. And it doesn't matter if it's Fernet Branca. There's a lot of different ones. But
It might not be your particular.
and there's
style
an
of Amaro
Amaro
that you like.
for everybody. I
Yeah.
don't care who you are. Like if you hate
No, exactly.
bitter,
Exactly.
chamomile, that what is it? Cardamaro is a cardoon.
Yeah.
But it has chamomile flavors. But Cardamaro, most people think is cardamom, but it's actually the cardoon,
Yeah.
which is what it's distilled from, which is like basically an asparagus genealogy, right?
Exactly. But no, that is a typical misconception because of the name. You think cardamom, but
So I have this pastry to medicinal.
Cardamaro is also
I learned this from Livio Laro.
Cardamaro is also a wine-based Amaro. It's not.
Ooh,
It's not
is
distilled.
it?
Yeah. Do you have it on the back bar?
I wonder. I should.
Cardamaro needs to be refrigerated after opening.
Shish kebabs. Son of a brachiosaurus, I'll tell you.
If I see
It's
it
it's
tomorrow-
like it's like Pasubio.
I didn't realize I didn't have it.
it's
You
like-
don't know what you run out of.
No, it's like Pasubio Amaro.
Dude, on this thing, when you have this kind of a bar, people come over and you just tap out bottles at a time, and you're like, and it always
You
happens.
ran out of Cardamaro. You've been drinking bad Cardamaro.
Well, I want to say that I forgot to buy Cardamaro because I felt like I had it, but
Yeah.
I didn't know that needed to be refrigerated. Though I know wine-based
Can you look that up?
Yeah,
I'm,
I don't know that that's true.
I'm
Because wine-based Amaros are normally dark. I get it; it would have to be a white wine.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's not true.
Yeah, not necessarily. It
But
doesn't
it's
matter
very interesting.
what the wine is, but like
Like Pasubio.
Pasubio is a
and,
wine-based Amaro as well.
There's a Doppio. It's a Koki. Koki makes a vermouth. They use their
Koki does make a vermouth.
So Koki has a Amaro Doppio.
Yeah,
That's another wine-based. Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah.
But the Pasubio, that's another thing about like bars, and I know we got to wrap this up, but like that's another thing about bars that have Amaro is they're not expensive, and when you're not, if you're gonna that's a great gift at the end. I don't Don't get me wrong. If they want a dessert and you gift them a dessert, because you have people that are your friends or regulars, or you want to show love. I've learned rules of this game. Don't comp the first drink, and don't comp every single time, because it can't be. This isn't a relationship like, hey, you're
where
coming
it's
here to get free
expected, everything.
shit.
But that it is a part
But
of.
I do want to show my love. I do want to say, hey, I really appreciate
Exactly.
you.
It's an expression
somehow.
of hospitality.
So I can always go to
they're,
Amaro.
They're gonna remember that.
Absolutely.
You're gonna create that experience, even if it's not like you don't pour a full one, pour a half one. Like,
Exactly. Well, that's what I do.
What is the cost
I do
on
exactly
that?
what you're seeing right here.
Yeah.
At Bramare, and
What is the cost of that? Like, it's not hurting you or the
let's say
restaurant,
it
but
costs the
but
restaurant
it's created
$2,
an experience.
$3 total.
If you pour a half one for somebody and they
or even a quarter. Taste them on 4 different ones. It's the equivalent of one shot. And then you're like, all right, that cost the restaurant
yeah.
like $1
But
or
if
$2.
if you're not giving them a full one, if they like it, chances are they're gonna
They'll
be like,
buy
"Hey,
it.
let me get one of
And
those." That was
sometimes
good."
it's just nice to when I do that tasting and I'm taking a 1/4 ounce pour out of each one. And which one do you want to try, by the way, or have? I know you've tried them all except this one.
I've not tried that.
But if we're gonna finish with anything, it has to be the Fernet. So if we're gonna try anything else,
That's Fernet.
it's a Fernet.
Oh,
I know, Radicale.
let's fucking do it.
Let's go.
Just to
have not had
clarify,
that one.
yes, Cardamaro Amaro will go bad, but it can last a couple of months after opening if you keep it chilled. Cardamaro is a wine-based Amaro, so it is different from other Amari, which are usually made from brandy.
Yeah,
Because-
brandy or like neutral grain. So
Well, Amaro Nonino is
Grappa
made from
based.
is grappa, but it's grappa uve,
Mm-hmm.
which is not the must. It's actually the fresh pressed juice, which shocks me. Like, how is it grappa? But that they have their own style. It's called, they patented grappa uve with Amaro Nonino, but I don't understand why it's not a wine, why it wouldn't be, like, what makes it a grappa if it's not the must? Like, why do we, it's uve is a special, like, where it's not the must, but like, why is it so called grappa? Right?
Instead of brandy. Yeah.
Right. Like a brandy base, right? But they were like, no, this is, this is,
Maybe it's because Nonino itself is a grappa distillery, and a lot of people don't realize this. Nonino is more popular in Italy for their grappa than they are for their Amaro. Here, like, most people know Nonino for Amaro Nonino, and it especially became popular because of the paper plane cocktail.
it's sweeter. It's sweeter than Fernet Branca.
They had sugar.
I mean, even Fernet Branca has a little bit of sugar, but it's almost no sugar. But this is
That's a Fernet, yeah.
it's a Fernet, but man, this is a real pleasant, soft, approachable Fernet as far as that category is concerned. This is on the nicer end of that spectrum where
Still very dry, but it's good.
But yeah, and I mean, my palate's burnt out. Like, dude, I freaking love bitter and aggressive stuff now. Like, I'm like Mezcal Negroni because Campari and gin isn't enough.
Yeah.
Give me Mezcal. Give me something more. I want to burn my palate
This is
out.
good. I like this. I like a good Fernet though.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
But going back to Nonino, Nonino is it's a grappa distillery, and they make Chardonnay grappa and different grappas from different grape varietals. That's their main production is grappa. However, they started making Nonino, the Amaro, from their grappa, like the grapes and all this stuff that they use, which became very popular. But they also make grappa, which is very good.
Well, on that note, let's end it. I do want to say, as a final thing,
Great way to end it with this Fernet.
a lot of people see you tapping the bar top and wonder why do they do that. And the reason that I've been taught, and I'm sure someone will argue with me, but the reason I've been taught is you cheers to the person with you. Then you cheers to everyone that helped this spirit go into the glass. So the farmer, the bottler, the designer, you're cheersing everyone that got this product into your hands, including the rep,
The master distiller,
including
the
the
master blender
J.R.
that we were
Starkist
talking
that,
about. Yeah.
that talked you into getting it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, it goes.
like you're
It goes
cheersing
beyond
all those
bottling.
people.
Like,
So
yeah,
it's
the
a
distribution.
term of respect for and I mean again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've been taught, and I love that, and it makes me honestly, it's like I got to stop doing it with wine.
Most people do it just because
Like you don't do it with wine, but I still have. I'm like,
it's just something
like,
you do.
cheers, and you got like a wine glass with this time. You're like, oh, what?
Yeah.
That's silly.
No, I like that way of thinking about it. It's like a cheers to you,
Cheers to you,
cheers to
and thank you for getting
everybody
us
else.
here, you know.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cheers.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.